I was daydreaming in one of the classes. I remember the teacher was explaining something on the board in Arabic. And I started thinking to myself, if only I understood what he was explaining, if I knew Arabic, that would be the greatest dream for me to achieve. But I did nothing about it. I was giving a lot of importance to just reciting the words of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala without actually comprehending what it means. The Qur'an, once we understand it, you can't help but love it.
No.
And I didn't have to travel abroad. We are able to do it wherever we are as long as we're determined and we make use of the facilities that we have. From 10 onwards, nobody ever told me, have you memorized Qur'an? Nobody asked me, have you done your work for the madrasa? Have you done your Islamic studies? Never. From that day until today, I don't think my parents ever followed up. The key word you mentioned is coming out of your comfort zone. A lot of us, we stick to what we're comfortable with. We feel like we can't understand Qur'an. We've made it seem like it's very complicated. It's not complicated. 80% of the Qur'an is clear. It's your story.
Allah.
Fill in the gaps, find your story. You just need to look at it. And that's why Allah gave it to us. And that's why the story of Musa alayhi salam is the most mentioned in the Qur'an, because everyone's life relates to it.
Allah. And it is my honor and pleasure tonight to have with us our beloved Shaykh Yahya Raaby, who actually is attending this retreat for his second time. Many of you were thinking, actually, we haven't seen him in the lineup, but I can confirm that he did attend a retreat. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh, first and foremost.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. 2013.
2013, Allahu Akbar. And were you delivering lectures or seminars?
No, I came to attend and enjoy it.
Allahu Akbar. Was it a good retreat?
Oh, it was incredible.
MashaAllah.
That's why I came back after all these years.
Allahu Akbar. The question is that why do you come back sooner?
Wallahi, I am always never here at that time of the year.
Subhanallah.
So, but this time I made sure I was here.
Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah.
And we're very happy that Shaykh made time in his schedule to attend, right?
No, stop.
No, that's not good enough. We're very happy that the Shaykh made time to attend, right?
Allah.
Allahu Akbar. Good. Excellent.
No, that wasn't good enough. I'm going to leave that class. They don't want me here.
Barakallahu fi Shaykh. Let's begin, inshallah ta'ala, with getting to know you beyond what we see of you, inshallah. I'm privileged to have met you many years ago.
Correct.
Alhamdulillah, we come from the same area in London,
Yes.
but you were not born in the UK, were you?
No, I was not.
Where were you born?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala Rasulillah. I was born in a small city known as Colling. Now, anyone who's good at geography may know where that is. I doubt anyone knows where that is.
Let's give a prize.
Aha.
Can someone guess where that is?
What country is that in? The city of Colling. It's spelled Koldging. Close enough.
Sweden.
Very close. Who said Norway? It's close to Norway, but it's not quite. Not Finland, that's a bit further away. Someone said it. Denmark.
Denmark, mashallah.
Actually on the border between, very close to Germany. I was born there. And one may think, yani, what on earth brought a Somali to a city known as Colling in a small country known as Denmark?
So
I
can you
didn't choose where I was born. So my parents, may Allah Azza wa Jal bless them and have mercy upon those who passed amongst them, that they migrated to Denmark after the civil war happened in Somalia. And we were born there. And I lived in Denmark for the first 5 years of my life. So subhanAllah, that's when my journey started. I remember my mother, may Allah have mercy upon her, she used to take me to what we know as Duksi. You guys know Duksi? It's the madrasa, the maktab, where you learn Qur'an. At the age of 5, I started. And I remember I used to say to my mum, is it wajib to memorize Qur'an? And she would say to me, yes, it's wajib, you have to memorize.
Oh.
So that's where it started. And at the age of 5, my parents decided to move to the UK. And perhaps it's one of the best decisions they made in terms of our Islam. Because Islam is a lot better in the UK than it is in Denmark. And it's a lot easier to practice Islam in this country than it is in Denmark. So alhamdulillah, we moved to the UK and this is where I've been until today.
So you moved to West London?
Yes, I lived in West London since I came here.
Allahu Akbar. It's the best part of London.
Of course it is.
Anyone who needs to know where the best part of London is, it's West London.
Of course. Of course.
So you were in Hayes, I believe,
Yes,
and there's an institute called Badr Institute.
correct. Yeah,
So can you shed some light on what that is?
So I alhamdulillah, bifadlillah tabarak wa ta'ala, I started memorizing the Qur'an very young, and at the age, I remember that when we came to the UK, we went to a madrasa as well, and we would go there on the weekends every Saturday, Sunday. And when I got to around the age of 10, I was daydreaming in one of the classes. I remember the teacher was explaining something on the board in Arabic. And I started thinking to myself, if only I understood what he was explaining, if I knew Arabic, that would be the greatest dream for me to achieve. But I did nothing about it. At that time, I started frequenting my local masjid.
Okay.
So I started going there for Masjid Quba. I started going there for the salawat. And then a year later, I started calling the adhan for the salawat.
Okay, mashallah.
At that time, I was around maybe 11 or 12. And I would come like half an hour, 40 minutes before the adhan to make sure that the uncles don't lead me to the adhan, because it was tough competition. And I had to make sure that, I left my mark. This is my job.
Mashallah.
But after doing it for a very long time, the uncles finally gave up and they let me do it. But it was a tough fight. So I remember one day, after calling the adhan for Salat al-Maghrib, there was a group of our mashayikh who were in the masjid. And one of my mashayikh, his name was Shaykh Ismail, he called me after I called the adhan, he called me over. He said to me, Yahya, come over here. And he said to me, how much of the Qur'an have you memorized? So at that time, I'd memorized a number of ajza. So he said to me, would you like to learn the Qur'an and Arabic and other Islamic sciences? I said, of course, I would love to do that. He told me that there's an institute that we just established called Badr Islamic Institute, and you should definitely come to it. So I said, yes. So I just made the decision. Every Saturday, Sunday, I used to go there. I used to take 2 buses from Hayes. It was in Cranford, you know Cranford?
Yeah, Cranford, yeah, Heathrow, yeah.
Yeah. It was in Cranford at the time. And that's where it started. I actually went there and I was assessed. So I had memorized the Quran, but I hadn't memorized it with tajweed. So my sheikh said to me, no, this is not on. You have to start again from Surah Al-Fatiha and Nas and make sure you correct your recitation. So I started fresh again and learning to recite it with tajweed and memorizing all over again with tajweed. And then I started learning Arabic and the other Islamic sciences. And alhamdulillah, that's where it started. And then Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala opened many doors after that. So,
what I find really interesting is how you came to the UK. And for us, sometimes we think the access to Islamic knowledge and progression and memorization is abroad. And it's to leave the UK. But actually, in your story, you came to the UK and you studied in the UK, and you have a master's in Islamic studies in the UK. And I think that's really inspirational. Sometimes as parents, we think we have to maybe invest in our children going abroad. Do you think that's the case in today's time now?
Alhamdulillah, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala blessed me with many opportunities that came my way here in the UK. And I didn't have to travel abroad in order to achieve or attain a lot of the things that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala allowed me to do so. And that's a pure blessing from Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. But it also teaches us that we are able to do it wherever we are, as long as we're determined and we make use of the facilities that we have. In the UK, we're very blessed. And we have access to a lot. We have institutes, we have the schools, we have universities, we have all that available for us to learn. We have many mashayikh, we have many scholars that are present who are available to teach, who would love to teach. So all of that, it is a matter of us utilizing it so that we actually get the education that we require. And also we need to instill the love of that in our children. I say to people that I don't think that I learnt deen because it was, I don't believe that I did it because it was an act of worship or something that is praised in Islam. I did it because I just loved it. I liked it.
So that's a really good point, because you said you decided to go.
No, my parents never told me to go.
So they must have done something or created a household that inspired that love for you to do so? So can you shed some light on that?
100%. I believe those 5 years, from the age of 5 to the age of 10, that period where I was going, even though I didn't like it, what happened was that I grew to like it. And there was things happening at that time that made me enjoy this process that I started pursuing it myself. From 10 onwards, nobody ever told me, have you memorized Qur'an? Nobody asked me, have you done your work for the madrasa? Have you done your Islamic studies? Never. From that day until today, I don't think my parents ever followed up. I completed the memorization of the Qur'an, and they came and celebrated with me the completion of the memorization of the Qur'an, but they never ever followed up because they knew how passionate I was about it. My grandmother, may Allah Azza preserve her, she was memorizing the Qur'an same time as me. She came to the UK in 1991. And she, in Somalia, did not have the opportunity to memorize the Qur'an because she grew up as an orphan. She was the eldest, she was taking care of her siblings. So when she came here, she said, I'm not doing anything, so I'm going to start learning Qur'an. She started learning Alif, Ba, Ta, the alphabet. She didn't know how to read. She started from the alphabet. You can imagine at her old age, it was very difficult. And then she eventually learned how to read, and then she started memorizing Qur'an. Now, I remember when I was memorizing the Qur'an, she would always ask me, where are you now? What surah are you on? Why? Because she was competing with me.
She was your companion.
She was like, I'm going to finish Qur'an before you. But I made sure, because it would be embarrassing, my grandma beat me, right? So I was like, no way my grandma's going to beat me.
So that was the motivation.
Alhamdulillah, I managed to complete Qur'an 2 years before her.
Allah.
Right? And then she completed 2 years after. And what you need to bear in mind, she completed the Qur'an in 2012, and she started in 1991. Right? But she persevered and she kept going. And today, she finishes the Qur'an every 3 days.
Allah.
She completes the Qur'an every 3 days.
Allah.
Right? And now she's over 80. Every 3 days she completes Qur'an without fail. I feel embarrassed because I don't do that. So when I see her, she's sitting there, she recites the Qur'an every 3 days without fail. She completes the Qur'an.
Amazing. SubhanAllah.
No.
Okay, let's go into more of your journey at a later age. So I believe you travel across the globe now, and you're associated with some organizations in the US. Do you want to shed some light about the work that's happening there?
So Alhamdulillah, the Qur'an, if I go back 10 years or just over that, when I was memorizing the Qur'an, one thing that I was very passionate about and that I care about a lot and that was very important to me, it was because I was learning Arabic, I need to understand Qur'an. I need to understand what Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is saying to me. I need to be one who is reflecting upon the Qur'an, who is really trying to live the message that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala sent to us. So one of my mashayikh, he used to work in an initiative which involved or revolved around reflecting upon the book of Allah Tabarak wa Tadabbur, bringing the ummah to tadabbur, doing that which Allah Azza wa Jalla commands us to do, where He says, Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka mubarakun liyadabbaru ayatihi wa liyatadhakkar ulul albab, a book that we have revealed to you, O Muhammad alayhi salatu, which is blessed, so that they can reflect and ponder and contemplate over its verses. That's for everyone. Every single Muslim is meant to be reflecting, contemplating, pondering over the verses of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, so that leads to tadakkur, we remember, we act and we live by those verses. So that was something that my Shaykh, because of his involvement, I was really inspired by that. So what I used to do was every single year my Shaykh used to go to Hajj. And back then there wasn't a lot of the books and publications weren't available online. So I used to tell him every single year, when you go to Hajj, can you bring me all those publications, the new publications, so I can read them and learn this science of tadabbur.
Okay.
So when I would finish the books, the next year, the next books, and like that. And then what it did was that I started to find that one of the biggest issues that I found I have, it is that I was giving a lot of importance to just reciting the words of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala without actually comprehending what it means. It just became a ritual for me. And that bothered me a lot. Like, it really bothered me. Why am I just doing a ritual without having the slightest curiosity? What is Allah saying to me? These are important words. If someone important was saying something to me, I would make sure that I understand everything that they're saying and I comprehend it and I reflect over it, because it has my benefit in it. So that gave me a complete shift. And I wanted to make my whole life revolve around that. And then subhanAllah, I did nothing. You know one thing my father always says to me? He says to me that you've never worked hard for anything in your life. I think every father says that to their son. But when my father says that, he's referring to a lot of the opportunities that Allah Ta'ala blessed me with. It wasn't something that I actually strived for. And I believe that Allah Ta'ala brought those opportunities to me because of Qur'an. And that's the barakah of the Qur'an. That when you are one who, I don't claim that I am a person of Qur'an, and I believe I have a lot of shortcomings when it comes to the Qur'an, but I love Qur'an, right? Even though I have many shortcomings when it comes to the Qur'an. And because that love that I claim that I have for the Qur'an, and that I wanted to do something with Qur'an in my life, I believe Allah Ta'ala perhaps opens some doors for me. And some of the doors that Allah Ta'ala opened for me is that I was granted an opportunity, which I was forced into, by the way, when I finished studying at the Institute Badr, and I graduated. Towards the end of my studies, part of the curriculum is that we had to actually start teaching.
Okay.
It was mandatory. Now, if you knew me 15 years ago, you would know that I was a very reserved, shy person. I was very introverted. Didn't talk to anyone I didn't know. Very quiet. So that was a very difficult thing for me to do. Like, I was like, no way I'm standing in front of people and speaking to them. I can't do that. But my teachers, may Allah bless them, they said, it's mandatory, it's not a choice. So I would come every time and I would deliver it or do what I was told just because my teachers told me to do it, even though I hated it. But the more I did it, I started to learn certain skills. I was given training, I was given assistance, and then the better I got at it, I started to like it. And I learned a lot of skills.
This is quite a trend here we're seeing, from being of the age up to 5, not liking it, but then, persevering, then coming through, persevering. So it's showing us that actually perseverance, coming out of the comfort zone and to follow through, leads to the opening of many opportunities.
The key word you mentioned is coming out of your comfort zone. A lot of us, we stick to what we're comfortable with, and we don't want to come out of our comfort zone. And it actually, the Qur'an talks about that a lot. Like, Musa alayhi salam, in order for Musa alayhi salam to become that leader, he had to go out of his comfort zone. Something major had to happen. He committed murder by accident. And then that led to فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا. He left Egypt, which was his comfort zone. He grew up in the palace of Fir'aun. He left fearful. He's a fugitive now. Fir'aun's looking for him. What happened? He had to go to Madian. Madian was his training ground. To go out of his comfort zone, he's starting fresh, to learn new skills, to learn a new version of himself, to grow, to develop these skills to become a leader. He had to go out of his comfort zone to come back as that leader that's going to face Fir'aun and transform the system and create a system that's pleasing to Allah Ta'ala. That's a trend. And that's why when I read the story of Musa in the Qur'an, I relate a lot to it. I see a lot of my life. When I read Surah Qasas, because that's a surah that mentions the story of Musa almost complete in one surah. When I read that surah and I see the different stations that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam went through, I'm like, that actually is describing my life. Musa was born in Egypt. He was born in Egypt at a time that Fir'aun was butchering the sons of Bani Israel. In an oppressive time, a system that is targeting Bani Israel, his people. I was born in Denmark. I was born in the West. A whole system that was made target Muslims. His mother was terrified. She was afraid for her son. My parents were terrified for my Islam, my safety, growing up in these countries. But just like Musa, his mother, she was terrified, but Allah told her that to let go. And He promised her, you're going to get him back. She let go, it led him straight to the palace of Fir'aun. The wife of Fir'aun sees Musa, and this is the interesting part. She falls in love with him. She says, perhaps we could take him as a son or he may benefit us. That made me think a lot. Why did the West open their doors for us? Because they wanted us to become their people and for us to benefit them, not to benefit us. And it's the same thing with Fir'aun. They wanted to take Musa to become one of them and that he benefits them. And then Musa is taken into the house of Fir'aun. What protects him? Allah protected him. وَحَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَرَاضِعِ. We prevented him from accepting the nurses to breastfeed him. And then his sister says, I know a woman who can breastfeed him. What happened? His mother is brought to the palace. She is taking care of her son, she's raising him, and she's getting paid for it. He's safe. That's by her relying upon Allah Ta'ala. But it didn't stop there. Musa now had access to the system that nobody had. He had access to Fir'aun. He's living in his house. He's grew up in his house. I grew up in London. I had access to the system that a lot of Muslim people in the Muslim world don't. I went to school here. I was educated here. I grew up in a society. I was seeing all of that. And at the same time, I had a different life at home. And that's exactly how Musa was. Musa was seeing that life, that system he was growing up in, and his mother was instilling in him his values and his sense of belonging, his identity. Same with me. At home, my parents were teaching me Islam, Qur'an, Deen, that this is the ummah I belong to. I'm going to madrasa, all this. He was living the same thing. And he grew up just like that. And because of that sense of belonging that his mother instilled in him, he never forgot his roots, Bani Israel, who were being oppressed and enslaved. And just like that, I grew up in London, comfortable, just like Musa was comfortable in the palace of Fir'aun, safe, just like Musa was safe in the palace of Fir'aun. But I was seeing my brothers in Gaza, in Syria, in Iraq, in Somalia, in Afghanistan, and I'm feeling some sort of sadness, and I'm also feeling this anger, and I'm also feeling this rage, and I feel also helpless. That's exactly how Musa felt. And he grew up feeling like that. But not only that, I also see how we're being demonized on the TV by the media. Muslims are being demonized. Musa is seeing how Fir'aun's system is demonizing Bani Israel. He has to hide his identity, just like I felt like I had to hide my identity as a Muslim. All of that, it just painted my upbringing here in the UK through Qur'an. But then Musa grew up as a young man, just like every young man here in the West, with all these emotions. He's harboring all these emotions. And then one day he sees one Egyptian man attacking one of his people, Bani Israel. His first instinct was, I need to stand up for him. I need to defend him. All of these emotions come out in one instance, and he accidentally kills him. He acted on impulse, emotion. Don't we see that all the time? That our brothers, we get frustrated, rightly so.
Yeah.
And then we do something that we really, really regret. And it actually causes more harm than good. That's exactly what happened to Musa. That's what Allah is teaching us, that when you act on emotion without strategy, you act on impulse without strategy, this oppressive system will remain and you will leave fearful. That's what happened to Musa. Musa left, the system remained. He didn't change anything.
Yeah.
Allah now took him to the stage of Madian, where he had to now train. Tarbiyah. But what did he need in Madian? He needed first a different environment. He needed to leave. What did he have to leave? He had to leave a location that was toxic. He had to leave a mindset behind. He had to leave a version of himself behind. He had to leave all of these things that were pulling him back and holding him back from his growth behind. But that wasn't it. He also was headed towards a direction he didn't know. Allah says, وَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ. When he was heading towards the direction of Madian, he had no idea what was in store for him. But you know what he did? قَالَ عَسَى رَبِّي أَن يَهْدِينَ سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. He said, I ask Allah to guide me to the path. Now this is very interesting. Musa is asking Allah to guide him. I ask Allah to guide me every day as well. I say, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, at least 70 times a day. But the question is, do I say it like Musa?
No.
How did Musa say it? Musa had no home. He was fearful. He had no food. He had no people. He had no money. He has nothing. He's desperate. Do I ask Allah for guidance being desperate? Because that's how I get a response.
No.
But then as soon as he gets to Madian, he sees a group of women or two women standing on the sidelines. And he sees a bunch of men getting water for their cattle. Straight away his instinct is, even though he's in dire need himself, let me see what the matter is. ما خطبكما? What's the matter? They said, قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. We are not going to go get water for our cattle until the men go away. Because we're shy with women, we don't mingle with men. And our father is an old man, that's why he couldn't come and do it. So we had to do it on his behalf. Straight away, he says nothing to them. He goes, he gets some water, he brings it to them. He doesn't expect no reward. He doesn't expect any thank you, nothing. He goes under a shade of a tree. He just served people even though he needed to be served. He served people that are less desperate than him. He's more desperate. He's more in need. But he served in order to be served by Allah. He went under a tree. What did he do under the tree? Now I want you to imagine with me, because this is how I picture it in my head. That when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam went under that tree, he was crying. Anyone who was in that situation who has nothing, who just lost everything in one instance and doesn't know where to start, I believe he was crying to Allah. قال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. My Lord, I'm in dire need of the khair that you sent down. He showed weakness and vulnerability to Allah, but he only showed strength to the people. He never showed weakness to the people, even though he was weak. Why? And through that, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala straight away granted and respond. One of the sisters comes. فَجَاءَتُ إِحْدَاهُمَا. One of the two sisters comes. She's walking in a modest manner, bashful. She says to him in a modest manner, our father wants to reward you for what you've done. He comes to the father. He tells him his long story. And now what happens? He gets something else. A mentor. And this is an essential pillar of tarbiyah and to grow. You need a mentor, murabbi. This Shaykh Kabir became his murabbi, who was mentoring him. What did he do? فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَصِ. Musa came to him and told him the stories of what happened in the past. He told him his whole life story. He said, قَالَ لَا تَخَفْ. Don't be afraid, don't fear. نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. He said, you're safe from the oppressive people. Notice what he did here. This is an important thing that a mentor needs to do. He said to him, you are safe from the oppressive people. He called those in Egypt oppressive people. Musa told him he committed murder by accident. He didn't call him out for his mistakes. He gave him a safe space for him to vent, and he gave him a safe space for him to learn. He didn't judge him. He taught him through other means to grow, because there's no point dwelling on the mistakes from the past. Now we need to learn from it.
Yes.
And that's what the mentor did. He gave him that space, and now Musa has been heard by this man. And then one of the daughters, he says, oh my father, employ him. Look what she says. Inna khayra man ista'jarta al-qawi al-amin. She's the best person you can employ. And this is what every employer looks for, these two traits. Is the competent and the ethical one. Right. Trustworthy. Every employer is looking for someone who's competent. When you interview someone, you're looking for competency. And looking for how ethical are they? How trustworthy are they? And he had both those traits. He's strong and he's trustworthy. She said that's the best person you can employ. But then look what the father says. The father says, I want to marry one of my two daughters. Which one? The one that I just said employ him. The girl who said employ him, she would never have said that unless she liked him. She wouldn't have praised him unless she liked him. And the father was wise, he understood that. If your daughter is praising a man, she likes him, brother. Marry her to that guy. So the father understood that. He didn't need her to tell him. Because of that relationship he had with his children.
Exactly.
He was able to read them without them having to paint it out to him. He said, I want to marry to one of my two daughters, the one who just said, employ him. But you have to work for me for 8 years. And he says, ثمانية حجج. The wording he uses here indicates what kind of man this man is. He says, 8 hajjs, pilgrimages. Because there's one hajj each year.
Yes.
So he counts in hajjs. Why? Because he's a righteous man.
Yes, because his relationship.
He's connected to ibadah. He counts in ibadah.
Allah.
And he says, and if you complete 10 years, that's from you. And I don't want to make it difficult for me. You're going to find me amongst the righteous. Now a new chapter starts in Musa's life where he's growing. He spends at least 8 to 10 years in Midian. After spending 8 to 10 years as a shepherd, and he got married there, he learned skills that and traits that he needed to become that leader who was ready for the mission that Allah is going to put him on. Every single individual amongst us needs to find their Midian. Midian is not always a physical place. It's a process. You need to find that process. And that process that I went through in Badr,
yes,
and I'm going through today, now even I believe, it's my Midian. And I'm still going through Midian in order to become that individual who can actually do something for Allah and the religion of Allah, to serve Allah properly, like the prophets and the messengers of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala did. And everything I did across on that journey, it's summarized there, yani.
MashaAllah.
No.
Barakallah. Okay. A lot to ponder on there, Shaykh. Like you
Lots of
said.
it. You know, it's called Al-Qasas, the stories.
SubhanAllah.
It's your story.
Allah.
Fill in the gaps, find your story with your story. You will find it. Every single one of us, I'm sure that you who are listening right now can relate to a lot of the things that I said, and you can probably see parts of your story in there that I didn't see, because your personal story is in there too. You just need to look at it. And that's why Allah gave it to us. And that's why the story of Musa alayhi salam is the most mentioned in the Qur'an, because everyone's life relates to it.
Allah.
Now,
So, Shaykh, I think just to touch a few points in that, what you said, the relationship between the father and the daughter,
yes,
and understanding what the daughter was saying, the safe space
yes,
and ability to give tarbiyah and to let someone who has committed mistakes in the past, or in our context,
yes,
committed mistakes, and to better themselves,
yes,
and not be dragged back and held back by those mistakes, but rather have a growth mindset, have a positive mindset, and to look how we can grow in the remaining stages of our life, the days that we have coming forward, however many they may be, but to have a positive mindset that we can improve, that we can change our state. And also a point that you really kind of touched on, which I thought was really amazing, is sometimes we fall into a habit where we blame our circumstances.
yes,
And we had Sheikh Dr. Hatem Al-Haj with us recently, and he was mentioning that he found that a lot of brothers, they are quick to jump for their normal excuses. When things are going wrong, when they're falling short maybe because of their own shortcomings, it's, you know, it's the society, it's the media, it's the machine against us. It's everything else apart from my own shortcomings, my own effort, my own perseverance in actually, yes, taking responsibility and accountability. So as parents living in the West, what type of advice could you give us to link our children with the Qur'an in a way which is instilling love, hope, and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in a way where, like you said, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, told you have to go and do this, etc. And also, you're not seeing when the Lord is saying, okay, actually, his circumstances don't let me do this. You know what? It's okay if they're just praying 5 times a day. I'm happy with that, because look at our circumstances. It's so harsh for us.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful question. You know, I have come to the conclusion that the Qur'an, once we understand it, you can't help but love it.
No.
But we have put so much emphasis on our children just learning the words without understanding it. And then when they grow older, because they never understood it, they abandon it because the process was wrong. Part of the process is we need to get them to memorize the words. Yes, that's important. But at the same time, give them the ability to understand, to delve into what Allah is saying to them. They will grow so fond of it, they will love it, they won't stop looking into it. I was in Mecca a few weeks ago, and we had a group of our young brothers who were with us. We used to have in the Haram every day after Fajr and after Isha, we used to have a reflection session. And we were reflecting on ayat, and what we did was that we created a sort of system that we had a rule that these ayat that you read when you're reflecting on it, that they have to be purposeful, they have to be connected to the objective of the surah, and they also have to be personal to you, and then you need to come up with a practical guidance that you take from it as well. Right? So all the reflections that were being extracted, when we personalized it and everyone started looking at it from a personal perspective, they were like, wow, I never thought that the Qur'an had solutions and answers to what I needed. We need to start personalizing the Qur'an for our children. We need to start telling them that this Qur'an is your answer and showing them where the answers are. You know, when a non-Muslim comes to us and they show interest in Islam, the first thing that we do is that we give them a translation of the copy of the Qur'an. We tell them you'll find answers here, you're going to find guidance here, and you're going to make decisions that are going to change your life.
Wow.
You know, the ironic thing is, the one who gives them the translation never sees guidance from it himself. He probably never read the translation of the Qur'an himself.
Oh.
Because the problem is that We feel like we can't understand Qur'an. We've made it seem like it's very complicated. It's not complicated. 80% of the Qur'an is clear. 20% is what requires you to go to a scholar. It doesn't make sense mathematically to abandon 80% because of 20%. If you don't understand 20%, go to the Mashaykh and the ulama, ask them and clarify and ask them to explain to you. But the 80% that's clear, go through it, understand it, live by it, reflect over it, and share it with your family. Rather, I believe that our families need to have reflection sessions at home.
Allah.
These sessions, they are transformative. That's you take a surah and you study this surah together and you reflect upon this surah and you look at how this surah connects to your life and what you did and what you're going through and so on. And you'll find that every single surah is really relevant to what you're doing right now. And it's always amazes me that every surah I read, and when I look at it and I look back at it again, just the other day, we were going through Surah Al-Ankabut. And Ankabut, I probably reflected on it before, but the reflections that I did on recently, it was like, it was telling me right now what you're going through, Yahya, this is Ankabut. Like, if I was to go through it right now, we'll be here all day. But Ankabut, it was a demonstration and telling me what is happening in your life right now, Ya Yahya, this is all in Surah Al-Ankabut. And I was looking through it, and I was going through it because we chose the surah randomly, but it spoke to me directly. Yeah.
Allah. So I think we've got a point here which we'd like to have in the podcast and every night, inshallah, which is an assignment for the parents.
Yes.
A takeaway point, a practical point that you can implement in your daily lives, structure your sessions so that your workload, your family life, so you can implement something, inshallah. And I think this is great, Sheikh. So will you call it a reflection circle?
Yes.
So, okay, so I don't do that at the moment. So I'm the first one to sign up to this.
Inshallah.
So what do I do next week? Well, not next week. I'm not home next week. But when I am at home, yeah. What do I do? I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Amazing. I want you. This is what we do in our circles. We have like a 7-step process that we start off with.
Okay.
With every
Someone
surah,
start taking notes, right? Step
with
one.
every surah that we are reflecting on.
Okay.
The first thing that we do, that the first stage before anything we do with the surah, is that we need to first unlock what is the theme and the objective of the surah.
Okay.
Because that's the lens that I need to look at the surah with.
Okay.
If I don't have that lens, then my reflections are going to be random.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have direction.
Okay.
Right? So every surah has an objective. Right? So the first, we go through 7 steps to figure out the objective.
Okay.
The first thing we do is that we look at what's the context. And I need to find out, when was this surah revealed?
Okay.
Was it revealed before Hijrah or after Hijrah? Is it Makki or Madani? Okay. Because that tells me a lot about what was happening at the time.
So Makki and Madani meaning is
meaning that it's revealed before migration in Mecca, or even if it was revealed, or if it's Madani, it was revealed after migration, right? So that tells me a lot of what was happening at the time, what was society going through, what the Muslims going through, etc.
Okay.
And then what was if there's an actual reason of revelation?
Yeah.
Was there a backstory that led to this surah being revealed? All of that gives me context. So I look at the context first. But once we look at the context, we go to the next stage, which is we look at the start and the end of the surah. You know, if I'm giving a speech, my core message is going to be at the beginning and it's going to be at the end. Allah Ta'ala always gives you the core message of the surah at the beginning and at the end. You need to look at it and make the connections. The beginning of the surah and the end of the surah.
But we can't miss out the middle.
Not the middle, we're going to come to the middle, of course. It's part of the next stage. The start and the end. So I'm looking at the start to the end, I'm figuring out, okay, what is this saying to me? Then I go to the third stage, which is the name of the surah. The name of the surah tells you what the surah, it's actually one of the easiest ways to find out what the surah is talking about. Just reflect on the name of the surah. And if, for instance, have we never asked ourselves, the longest chapter in the Qur'an is called Al-Baqarah, the cow. Why is it called Al-Baqarah? Just a little bit of curiosity helps you unlock a lot. Have we ever asked ourselves, why is it called Al-Baqarah? Okay, then you may come to the conclusion, okay, the cow is mentioned in it, the story of the cow with Bani Israel. But why was the surah named after that? That story, which is perhaps maybe just a page or just under that, why was the surah named after that story specifically? What is it telling me? I need to reflect on that. If we think about it, the story of the Baqarah, it tells me a lot. Musa alayhi salam was told by Allah to convey to Bani Israel that Allah commands them to slaughter a cow. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَذْبَحُوا بَقَرَةً. Allah commands you to slaughter a cow. How do they respond? قَالُوا أَتَتَّخِذُنَا هُزُوًا. They said, are you taking the mick? That was their response. Imagine this, he's saying to them, Allah said, slaughter a cow. They say, are you taking the mick? And then, what does that tell me? The problem of Bani Israel was that they did not venerate Allah. There was no veneration internally for Allah. And due to that lack of veneration, that's what led to the lack of submission. And that's what Surah Al-Baqarah is all about. It's the only surah, is one of the steps that's coming up, by the way. Look for key words that are reoccurring or unique words. It's the only surah in the Qur'an that says, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those who believe in the unseen. Those who believe in the unseen. Only Baqarah says that. Because it's all about the internal belief. Because the internal belief is what reflects how you behave. And then Surah Al-Baqarah mentions every single act of worship. It mentions Salah, Zakah, Siyam, Hajj. And it mentions Mu'amalat, all the Mu'amalat as well. All of it, it mentions the whole system of worshipping Allah. And the surah started with, Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum. O mankind, worship your Lord. It's the response to Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is the book, there's no doubt in it. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Guidance to the good conscious. And then it gave you the system of guidance, Surah Baqarah. The whole system of guidance. All the acts of worship. But then you know what you notice as well? That every single act, ibadah and mu'amala, the normal interactions that we have, whether it is debts and whether it is marriage or whether it's divorce, all that, every single one of it is connected with taqwa. God consciousness. Even ayatul dayn, wattaqullah wa yu'allimkumullah. Fear Allah, be conscious of Allah, Allah will teach you. Why? Because it's about the internal matter again. It's not only about the act that you're doing physically, but it's about internally, how are you? How's your heart with Allah? And that's what Allah Azza wa Jalla connected all these. It's not about just doing act. It's about how is your heart while you're doing the act. And that's what Surah Al-Baqarah is teaching us. Because guidance starts within, which leads to the limb submitting. Right? Yeah. That's all that came from Al-Baqarah.
Yes.
Just reflect on the name. And look in the story of Baqarah, you find out all that and you connect all that. When you find the objective of the surah, then you start connecting the ayat. Because you know the surahs in the Qur'an, the ayat in every surah, they're not random. It's a coherent message. It's all connected. You need to read it as one message that's coherent and connected. When you read it like that, you start connecting with the dots and you start seeing the complete message. And that complete message is where you're going to get the guidance from. Right? Every Surah Baqarah is long, but every other surah in the Qur'an, even the short ones, are just like that. We need to go through those stages to figure out what the objective is. When we do that, then we start reflecting on it. The reflection we do, we have a system that we use amongst ourselves. It can get quite technical. Maybe I'll mention in another, we call it 7 dimensions. But I'll mention another.
So we're on point number 3 at the moment.
Yes.
The name.
Which was the name. The next step is the reoccurring words. Okay. Unique reoccurring words. Yep. There's words that reoccur, then they're telling you something. And there's unique words, they're telling you something.
Okay.
Pay attention to them. Also, that was number 4, right? Number 5, it is that, what was number 5? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We mentioned context. We mentioned, what do you mention first?
We mentioned context.
What was the first one? Remind me, guys, I have ADHD. Huh? You have to find out the objective surah. What was the first step? Context. What was number 2? Looking at the beginning of the surah and the end of the surah, making the connection. What was number 3? Look at the name. What was number 4? Unique and reoccurring words. Right? 3. Number 5, it is, now once you've done that, now you look at because by now you should have figured it out. Right? And then you look at, okay, how do you evaluate if you come to the right objective? Now you look at scholarly works. What did the scholar say is the objective of the surah? Because then you can assess, did I come to the right conclusion? Right? You can assess your outcome. Right? And then what that does is that it allows you to kind of assess yourself and see that you actually come to the right, and your system is working for you. All of that, when we do it, and we have that lens, then we go to the surah itself. Now we know the objective, we have the lens for the surah, and then what we do is that we start delving into the surah, and we start looking into the different ayat, and we start looking at different things, and then we use a number of questions for every single surah. Okay. And we call it the 7 dimensions. We look at every ayah from 7 perspective dimensions. We look at it from a spiritual dimension. We look from a theological dimension. We look at it from an intellectual dimension. We look at it from an emotional dimension. We look at it from an intellectual dimension and the moral dimension and the social dimension and the linguistic dimension. Those 7 dimensions, every single ayah we go through it in that way. So it gives you a holistic view of that ayah. So when you see that ayah, you see that all the ayah is talking to you from all these different angles, because it is. Right? I remember one time we did a workshop on Surah Al-Duha. We spent 2 hours on just Wad-Duha, the first ayah, Wad-Duha. Because the Qur'an is an ocean that has no coast.
Okay, so I think now 7 points within the 7 points. So let's say, going back to my case, right?
No.
So I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and we're starting this off from the first time.
No.
Would you advise us, for example, taking some of the surah from Juz Amma, something they're familiar with, breaking that down, going through that process? And if we don't have kind of the research done prior, or we're not learned ourselves enough, is there any resource or website you can direct us to that has reflections and lessons from the Qur'an that we can read and then kind of be slightly prepped when we're doing this with our kids?
With families, I always recommend that you take 2 angles. You take the stories of the Qur'an and you take the shorter surahs that most people are familiar with, because it makes it easier and it's more digestible, right? The surahs that you're familiar with. Secondly, you do what you know, right? You focus on what you know. What you don't know, you're not required to do it in the first place. In terms of resources, now this is where I'm very bad at, because I do not know resources in English. Most of the resources that I know in Arabic. So maybe the Mashaykh can help us out if they know any resources that can help in English, that can help. But the one thing that I do know is in English, 2 translations of the Qur'an that can help reflect. The clear Qur'an helps because it gives you all the themes. It divides all the ayat and it puts it together based on the themes that they're talking about. So that helps you kind of connect the ayat to know which ayat talk about the same thing. And there's also the Qur'an project, which kind of gives you a background to the surahs, and it kind of gives you all this background information, so on, that can help you, look at each surah with the correct kind of lens and so on. That can help. But any other resources that I know in English, that I don't know any others that come to mind.
I think there is a stall here actually during the retreat. I believe it's called the Qur'an Journal. So it helps you reflect and make tadabbur of the Qur'an and note it down and take it on. Maybe you guys could check that out, inshallah, in the stall area. And we also have the Ta'sil Qur'an Journey stall, which is a 2-year program. Many of you may be on that program. They've also got an intensive version for adults that runs for 5 days or 2 weekends. I think there's one coming up in January and February where they'll cover a macro lens, as you kind of discussed a few of the points with our Mashaykh, Sheikh Shapoor, and others in a double weekend course. So maybe the parents can attend that, and then from the lessons and the resources that they have from there, they can go on to starting this Quran reflection circle within their families, inshallah.
Amazing.
Sheikh, I've taken up a lot of your time.
Not at all.
I believe we've run over time. So I will request for any final words, and then we'll conclude. We were going to have a Q&A. Raise your hands if you've got a question.
Good.
Oh, mashallah, Sheikh was very clear.
Wonderful.
Everyone,
that means we can go to sleep.
Thanks to him. Allah Akbar. So Sheikh, any concluding words, and then we can...
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن المتقين في مقام أمين في جنات وعيون يلبسون من سندس واستبرق متقابلين كذلك وزوجناهم بحور عين يدعون فيها بكل فاكهة آمنين لا يذوقون فيها الموت إلا الموتة الأولى ووقاهم عذاب الجحيم فضلا من ربك ذلك هو الفوز العظيم فإنما يسرناه بلسانك لعلهم يتذكرون فارتقب إنهم مرتقبون. The speech of Allah is the best way to say it. Allah barak fik. Jazakumullah khair wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.